Hello, I'm Avis Kalfsbeck, and this is the Peace is Here podcast. Welcome to Peacewarts, School of Peacecraft and Inquiry, where we practice the skills of peace through short classes. We take the peace work seriously, but not ourselves. If you're joining us mid-school year, you're not late. Orientation begins at episode 198. Welcome back, Peace Scholars. You are in the Department of Chronicled Courage in the Hall of Records. In our last semester, we were in the greenhouse studying the biology of peace. Today, you've crossed the courtyard. You might know this subject elsewhere as history, but here we treat the past as a tactical manual. This department exists to prevent erasure masquerading as realism. We're here to challenge the idea that violence is the only realistic path of human history. When people tell you that war is inevitable, they're usually relying on a version of history that has been carefully edited. Here in the Department of Chronicled Courage, we keep our eyes on the evidence. As the historian David McCullough once wrote, history is a guide to navigation in perilous times. History is who we are and why we are the way we are. The orientation. Truth is the first shield. As you walk through these doors, you will see a phrase carved into the stone lintel, our hall inscription. Nothing is forgotten that is written in courage. But the axiom we live by in every class, the rule that governs our research, is the truth is the first shield. If you do not know the lineage of those who stood before you, you will find yourself defenseless against the noise of the present. Your primary instrument here is discernment. We treat documents like the 1963 Partial Test Ban Treaty as active blueprints. In this class, a treaty is not a dusty scrap of paper. It is a construction plan for a world that has already been designed. We're simply the crew that has arrived to finally finish the building. The concept, erasure as political act. The most effective way to keep a war going is to make people forget that peace was ever an option. This is erasure. It is a political act that removes the evidence of our common history and replaces it with a timeline of kings, generals, and inevitable clashes. If you delete the successful peace movements, the restorative justice circles, and the moments of shared labor from the books, you create a psychological state of learned helplessness. If the record shows only war, the student believes only in war. Our job is to be the forensic auditors of the human story. The history, the strategy of peace, and the Jeannette Rankin Brigade. The deleted peace of 1963. We look to 1963 as a scaffold for understanding how erasure works. Most textbooks remember 1963 primarily for the tragedy in Dallas. The erasure happens when we forget what was happening before that November day. In June 1963, President John F. Kennedy gave the American University speech titled A Strategy of Peace. He called for a re-examination of the Cold War, stating total war makes no sense in an age when great powers can maintain large and relatively invulnerable nuclear forces. He was refusing the realism of his generals. That speech led directly to the Partial Test Ban Treaty on October 10, 1963. A story of a population successfully choosing to de-escalate is often moved to the fine print of history because it proves that de-escalation is possible. The lineage of refusal, the Jeannette Rankin Brigade. On January 15, 1968, 87-year-old Jeannette Rankin led roughly 5,000 women to the U.S. Capitol to demand an end to the Vietnam War. This was not a sudden outburst. It was a lineage of refusal that bridged 50 years of American history. Rankin was the first woman in Congress and the only member to vote against U.S. entry into both World War I and World War II. In 1917, she famously declared, I want to stand by my country, but I cannot vote for war. By 1941, she stood entirely alone as the sole dissenting vote against entering World War II, having to hide afterwards in a phone booth to escape a mob of outraged fellow legislators, reporters, and citizens. The 1968 Coalition and the Radical Break. The brigade was a massive coalition including Women's Strike for Peace and civil rights activists like Coretta Scott King and Ella Baker. But it also revealed a generational shift. While Rankin utilized the traditional power of wives and mothers to lobby Congress, younger participants like the New York radical women felt this approach was too passive. They staged a burial of traditional womanhood at Arlington National Cemetery, arguing that women had to bury their submissive roles to become a political force that could truly stop a war. This moment birthed the phrase, "Sisterhood is powerful," and linked the suffragists of 1913 directly to the radical feminists of the late 1960s. The thesis, the recorded blueprint. The lesson for today is that peace has always been a persistent, complex, and well-documented labor. Erasure is the tool used to make us feel orphaned from our own history of cooperation. In this department, we argue that knowing the record is an act of defense. When you refuse to participate in a cycle of violence, you are not acting alone. You're standing on a foundation laid by those who came before. Your homework. 1. Look up the Jeannette Rankin Brigade or the 1963 American University speech and find one detail that isn't typically taught in a standard history class. 2. Write down one question about any of this episode's topics. If you don't have a question, just write, "No question." 3. Optional. Journal. Think of a time you were told something was inevitable. Looking back, was it actually inevitable, or was there a path of refusal you didn't see at the time? The ink of the future. In this department, we say that truth is the first shield. If you don't know that people have successfully refused war before, you will believe you are the first one trying to do it. As you leave the Hall of Records today, look at the blank pages at the end of the books on the lower shelves. History is still being written, and the ink only stays wet as long as there is someone willing to remember the truth. Until our next lesson, keep your eyes on the evidence. Class dismissed. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to support the Pieces Here podcast, the most helpful way is to follow it wherever you're listening. It helps share the message with others. You can also support this piecework at my Patreon for $4 a month, about what a used paperback goes for these days. Just go to Patreon at patreon.com/Avis Kalfsbeck. That's AVISKALFSBEEK. My most recent book is Monomutante, a best friend eco-fiction novella about food systems, featuring Tilly, Camus, Pedro, and the rest of the gang. It's book 6 in the Pedro the Water Dog Saves the Planet series and is available wherever you buy books. You can find all of my peace projects and stay in touch at aviskalfsbeck.com. Music is by Javier Peque Rodriguez. Sound effects are from Pixabay. Regarding peace, we need not delay or despair. We are not late. We are right on time to love. We are all scholars of peace. Listen for the peace.